Hey y'all, happy Tuesday, happy spoken word Tuesday. I hope you guys days come along fine. Anyway, you guys know on Tuesday I like to bring the word, right? And earlier I read the short from Galatians chapter 4 verse 9, KJV version. It's just basically, speaking to those who come so far and who are now known of God, who have took the time to learn God and have gained a knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, but have allowed the vices of this world, right? Or the elements of this world to turn them back again to the weaklings of this life, right? Well, you guys, of course, that is in Galatians 4, chapter 4, which I'm going to be reading today. Okay, so you can find that in Galatians 4, that same short, and it says, but I think I said now the first time, but it's how. But how? After that ye have known God, or rather are known of God, how turn ye again to the weak and beggarly elements of the world? And if you guys don't know what the word beggarly means, it means a state or condition of utter poverty, okay? Which so many of us are, which we don't even understand, but we are. We one step from being homeless and everything, right? So he's just saying, you have came too far to allow God to grab your hand and walk you out of the bondage and captivity you in, right? To be known of the Father, to gain all this knowledge, wisdom, understanding, to be again turned back by the weakened elements of this world, by allowing people to whisper things in your ear, to convince you of their false doctrines. Now, all the knowledge, wisdom, understanding you have gained is now in vain, and you have been dragged or convinced to be back in bondage. Because it's only bondage and captivity, right? When you allow so many things, to focus your desires on, okay? Instead of focusing on being free, right? So, it's really the opposite. You think you're doing free things, but you're doing things that's putting you in captivity. Because the main things that your heart, lust, and desire, your heart and flesh desire, right? It's just, elements of this world, or, the things that cause you to go in bondage because you rather spend more time on fulfilling your desires and lust, right, than to free your mind. So, in fact, all the things that you spend so much time on and focus, is causing you to be in captivity, right? To causing you, to be captivated, by the weakened elements of this world. Okay, so be careful with that. Just take the time one time to think about how you love something so much, and you spending so much time on this thing, spending so much money, your hard-earned money, your love, mind, body, and soul to this one thing because you desire it so much. That is a weak and beggarly element in the world that's going to keep you in bondage because you don't know how to discipline yourself from it, right? To free yourself from it so you can move forward and not be held back in captivity or bondage, right? All right, you guys. Again, I'm going to read Galatians chapter 4, okay? KJV version, right? All right. So here we go. And the header for this is, we are God's children. Now, pay attention to what I'm about to read you guys, because Galatians 4 focuses on Hagar, who was Abraham concubine, who had a baby for him because Sarah was barren at the time. And it focused on Sarah, because Hagar was the bond woman. And it focused on Sarah, who was actually Abraham's wife, right? Who miraculously born Isaac, to be the promise, of God. All right, so verse 1, chapter 4. Now I say that the heir, as long as he is a child, different nothing from a servant, though he be Lord of all, but is under tutors and governors until the time appointed of the Father. Even so we, when we were children, were in bondage under the elements of the world. But when the fullness of the time was come, God sent forth his Son, made of a woman, made under the law, to redeem that were under the law, that we might receive the adoptions of sons, okay? So he's just saying, the verse 1, now I say that the heir, as long as he's a child, different nothing from a servant, though he be Lord of all. So he's saying, yes, the heir, a child can be an heir, right? But he's still like the same as a slave because he's still restricted. Because he's underneath a slave at that time, because a slave will have more rights and ranks than a child, because a child is under restriction, right? And in fact, I believe I wrote them up there. Basically, if you do good or not, a child is basically a child, and they got to learn, right? Basically, into the fulfillment of time to be brought in. So even the Messiah, as a child, he was Lord of all, but he still had guardians. He had to be guided, right? So even though he was the heir, he had to wait until the point in time or the fullness of time before the Father can present him as our Messiah, right? Our Messiah in flesh, right? And I wonder, did I even write that part down? Let's see. Did I write anything about being a child? I may not even write down being a child because, because we know, like, again, I'm just saying that a child can be an heir to something, right? But a child is still a child. A slave will have more ranks than their child, but that child is still going to be Lord over all, right? But he's not going to be Lord over all until, his time is fulfilled, until he reached that certain age that he's a man. Until then, he's going to be guided, right? He's going to be guided and taught and everything. But once, the fullness of time take place, then he become the heir and the Lord of us all, right? So that's what he's saying. That's when the Father said, now I say that the heir, as long as a child, differing nothing from a servant or a slave, though he be Lord of all, but is under tutors and governors until the time appointed of the Father. So a child is just saying, black and white, a child, the Father, Lord, Messiah, who was a child. When he was a child, he didn't differ nothing from a slave or a servant, right? Although he was Lord of all, but he was under the tutors and the guidance and the governance until the time appointed of his Father. Okay, God. All right. Let's see. And then it says, verse 3, even so, when we were children, were in bondage under the elements of the world. Yes, because when we are children, we are, in bondage under the elements of the world because we got to be guided and taught and raised, okay? But when the fullness of time was come, God sent forth his son, made of a woman, made under the law. So when the fullness of time came, when, the Messiah was of age, he was like 33, then God sent him forth. I'm sorry. Please, I'll write that back. When the fullness of time, when the Father, determined that it was the fullness of the time, he sent the Messiah by the woman, right? God sent forth his son, made of a woman under the law. So the Messiah being the woman was born of the woman under the law. Being born from the woman is under the law, okay? So that the Messiah can redeem us who are also under the law, right? So that we can be adopted by him, adopted on his doctrine and everything, right? Given birthrights, so right, so we can follow his ways, okay? Let's see, verse 6. And because ye are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So he's just saying that because we are the sons, because everybody is the offspring of the of the Messiah, but it depends on what you follow. You following Satan or you following the Father, okay? So, and because ye are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. Abba basically just saying, Daddy, he sent the Spirit, forth, into his Son in their hearts, crying, Father, crying, Abba, Father, crying, Daddy, Daddy. Okay, that's what Abba means. Verse 7, wherefore thou art no more a servant, but a son. And if a son, then an heir of God through Christ. So he's saying, wherefore thou art no more a servant, because you have learned, right? You have became a man or a woman, right? And if you are a son, you have given their birthright and walking in Christ-like ways, then you are heir through Christ. Because in order to be an heir through Christ, you got to receive salvation, but you got to, be seeking the Father and diligent in truth, being Christ-like in order, to be an heir of God through Christ, okay? Because remember, Christ died for our sins, right? In order to be an heir, then you got to be renewed, right? Okay, you got to be renewed. So the wicked ways is not going to make you an heir, okay? But it's just going to make you a Gentile or Ishmael or someone by the flesh, okay? All right. Verse 8, howbeit then, when ye knew not God, ye did service unto them which by nature are no gods. But now, after that ye have known God, or rather known are of God, how turn ye again to the weak and beggarly elements, whereunto ye desire again to be in bondage? So it was now, but now, not how. So y'all can scratch that. Okay, so I just read this short, right? But verse 8 says, howbeit then, when ye knew not God, right? Ye did serve unto them by nature are no God. So he's telling, because this is actually Paul talking to the Galatians, okay? And he's telling the Galatians, when you guys didn't know God, y'all was serving pagan gods, was serving all those idols and everything. Now that you know God, why go back to the weak and beggarly elements of the world? Why you desire to be in bondage, right? Okay, so you was in bondage when you didn't know God. You were serving them, which by nature are no gods. All those idols, all those pagan ways, or all the laws of the lands, which was other gods, right? But now, since you have learned the true God, why be turned back to the beggarly elements of the world into bondage? And that's what Paul was speaking to the Galatians, from the Spirit, he had that was given to him from the Father through the Messiah. Okay. All right, verse 10, ye observe days and months and times and years. I am afraid of you, lest I have bestowed upon you labor in vain. Okay, so he's telling you, ye observe days and months and times and years. These Galatians and everything, they was like the astrology and the sun god and all that kind of stuff, right? But those are other gods and other idols and everything. That's why the Father said, that's why Paul said to them from the Spirit, I am afraid of you, lest I have bestowed upon you labor in vain. Because he's telling y'all observe all these days, months, and times and years. The astrology and the sun god and all that stuff. The cosmopolitan and everything up in there. So Paul said, y'all still throwing into my face. What I'm teaching you, I feel like I'm teaching you in vain. Because y'all want to learn about the stars and all that. Learn about the days, the months, the times, and the years. Instead of learning about the true and one God, Abba, our Father, right? And I wonder, do I have anything in that? That is, hold on. I might have something in there. Now, let's see. Do I have in this verse? Hey, I sure do. Okay, so ye observe days, months, and times, and years, right? It said the false teachers of the Galatians demanded, observance of days and months and seasons and years. And other legalism that they assume will lead them to a higher plane of spirituality. However, these were all weak and beggarly elements of legalism that only brought them into bondage. And you can get this from Enduring Word. Okay, so a lot I wrote down from Enduring Word. I didn't do a little bit more research just to to make sure I understand fully what he was saying. Okay. So when they saying the Galatians, demanded that people, there was false teachers that people observed their months, days, years. That's why we thrown off by now, right? They thought that it was putting them into spirituality, but in fact, it was only legalism that brought them into bondage. Okay, let's see, and also, and then when I was telling you guys, when you're not a servant but the son, and if a son, then heir of God through Christ. Now, because remember, sons are never slaves, and slaves are never sons in their father's houses. For example, the prodigal son was determined to return to his father as a slave, but the father refused, right? And will only receive him as a son because he was a son and not a slave. Okay? All right. And it says, so you see, we are first set free from slavery of our sins and the elements of this world, and then we are declared as sons and daughters, adopted into God's family, and so we are made heirs, right? But first we got to be adopted, and declared sons and daughters and set free from bondage, slavery, bondage, okay? We also inherit God himself, because it's a great power that we inherit, right? And to be an heir of God is the richest inheritance of all, okay? Our release from slavery, our sonship, the spirit of Jesus in our hearts, and our status as heirs of God. It's all birthrights given to us, right? We receive all those things through Christ. And again, I'm telling y'all, I got this stuff from Enduring Word. Okay. Let's see. What else? Also, it will be enough that we are purchased out of the slave market, but God doesn't want but God do not end there. We are then elevated to the place of sons and daughters of God by adoption, right? So when they say we are adopted by sons, we are elevated. We are free from slavery, our sin. We are free from the bondage, right? We are then elevated to the place of the sons and daughters of the God by adoption. That's how we become heirs of the God. We inherit God himself, the power, right? And the inheritance of God is the richest inheritance of it all. It can't get no better than that, okay? Also, when the Father was saying that he can redeem us under the law, that we might be adoption of the sons, right? He said, because Jesus says, he has the power and the resource to redeem us, right? Because Jesus is the man and has the right and the ability to redeem us. He came to purchase us out of the slave market, from our bondage to sin and the elements of this world, okay? Elements of this world, a lot of be that ABC thinking too. You guys, thinking, when a person said, oh, he deserves what he get, or, if you do good, good come to him, right? You might even call it karma, right? But again, this from Enduring Word, and these are all elementary principles, right? These are the kind of principles that cause and effect, right? But our good cannot justify us under grace, okay? Our bad need not condemn us. So the elementary thinking, you thinking that, if you do good, good come to him, he deserves what he get. If he, that's elementary thinking and everything, right? It's a cause and effect kind of thinking, right? It's the principle of cause and effect, right? That our good, cannot justify us under God's grace, okay? So that's elementary thinking, right? And our bad cannot condemn us because we under grace, right? So that's the elements of the world. All these weak and beggarly bondage that got your mind all twisted and caught up, right? Now, when we live in the principle, in the aspect of earning or deserving before God, we can't earn God, right? Or we can't feel like we deserve God, right? That means we living in bondage under elements of the world. Having that mindset of thinking that, we earning or deserving of God. No, that is a weak element of the world, right? To keep you in bondage and in captivity, okay? All right. So now let's go to verse 12. Brethren, I beseech you, be as I am, for I am as ye are. Ye have not injured me at all. Ye know how through infirmity of the flesh I preached the gospel unto you at first. And my temptation which was in my flesh ye despised not, nor rejected, but received me as an angel of God, even as Christ Jesus. Where is then the blessing that ye spake of? For I bear you record that if it had been possible, ye would have plucked out your own eyes and have given them to me. And am I therefore become your enemy because I tell you the truth? So this is Paul telling them again, before I became to know God, y'all despise me not, right? Y'all receive me as an angel, right? Even as Jesus Christ, right? Where is that you spoke of then? You didn't change on me now since I know truth, right? But he bear record, that it's been possible that you would have plucked yourself or plucked your own eyes, and given it to me. Because that's how much y'all had trust in me until I became known of the truth. But he's saying, am I therefore become your enemy because I tell you the truth? Now I become your enemy because I tell you the truth, right? And it says, verse 17, they zealously affect you, but not well. Yeah, they would exclude you that might affect them, right? So he's just saying, so all this stuff, before I became to the truth, you guys was admiring me and, were giving your life for me, accepting me as the angel and everything. But because, these Jews, because he's talking to the Galatians again, the Jews who actually persecuted the Messiah, this is Paul talking to the Galatians, just telling them, now y'all done changed on me because y'all got these, these courts, these people, the Galatians, remember back then they wanted them to demand them to follow the years, the months, the days and all that. These same people, these Jews was trying to force the Galatians to do all these things, and the Galatians kind of fell into it, became deceived by them, right? So that's when Paul said, they zealously affect you, but not well. Yeah, they would exclude you that you might affect them, right? So these people in these courts, these higher authority was pushing love bombs on the Galatians, right? To convince them, to follow them, to make them think that was a spirituality. But once they gained their love and trust, they demanded them to do what they wanted to like alienate them from Jesus, right? And follow their ways, making them believe that they was in the spiritual way, right? And let's see what I have wrote about that. It's verse 21. Okay. So no, I didn't write about that. But yeah, I'm just telling you guys, so it's just the course, because Paul again is talking to the Galatians, right? He was telling them First, y'all would give y'all life for me and send me as an angel, but now I'm telling you the truth, I'm your enemy, because these higher authority is making y'all believe that they are spirituality, but in fact, they are alienating you guys from Jesus, right? Love bombing y'all, giving y'all this special attention and everything, making y'all think they're true. No, but there is a false doctrine. So they're gonna first they get all your love by showering you with attention and everything, throwing all this love on you and everything, making you think that they're true. But in fact, it is a trap. Because once they allowed the Galatians to learn to love bomb them and learn all that stuff they was teaching them, it was all just to entrap them to their doctrine, to alienate them from Jesus, right? To force them to go by their ways, right? Which happened, right? Verse 18, and it says that, but it is good to be zealously affected always in a good thing, and not only when I am present with you. My little children, of whom I travail and birth again until Christ be formed in you. I desire to be present with you now and to change my voice, for I stand in doubt with you. So these same people, because he's telling them all these things, how they allow, these courses, high authority, to deceive them. But before that, they love Paul. Now, because they throwing them all this, everything, Bibles and, gaining them, winning them all in, right? He's telling them, now he have doubt. Now he want to use strong words against them because they done fell into their trap, right? So he come and stand before them and he desired to be present with you. But he said, but now, to change his voice because he's standing in doubt to you, right? He has to use strong words because the Galatians became deceived under the high authority, who have deceived them to fall into their trap, by love, bumming them, showing them attention, just making them feel good about everything, but it was just a trap to get them on their team and then force them to follow their ways, okay? And let's see what else I have in here. Probably. Okay, that's going down to the other verses. All right. So verse 21 says, tell me, ye that desire to be under the law, do ye not hear the law? Okay, now Paul is comparing the law and grace because law and grace don't mix, right? Like flesh and spirit don't mix. It just don't mix, right? Okay. So now he's talking to the Galatians. He's telling them, tell me, ye that desire to be under the law, do you not hear the law, right? Now he's saying, for it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondmaid, the other by a free woman, right? So now he's trying to speak to the Galatians, because Galatians, right, they got caught up in what the Jews or the higher authority of the Jews, the Pharisees and scribes, and, to convince them, with their courts zealously, shining them with love bombs and everything, right? To the point where now they're rejecting Paul and making him the enemy, right? Because now, these Jews or these higher authorities have really convinced Galatians that the law is what they should follow. So that's why Paul asking them, tell me, ye that desire to be under the law, do ye not hear the law? That's when Paul now is going to compare the law to grace. And that's why he said, verse 22, for it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondmaid, the other by a free woman. So be attentive right now, okay? Because now I'm about to tell you guys the bond woman who was Hagar, who Abraham had a child by, when Sarah was barren at the time, right? It was important for Sarah to have a child in that time. That fullness of time hadn't came yet, right? Remember, because the Father do everything in appointed times and eras, okay? Now, let's read that again, verse 22. For it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondmaid, the other by a free woman. Verse 23. But he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh, but he of the free woman was born after the promise, right? And it goes to say, which things are an allegory, for these are the two covenants. The one from Mount Sinai, which generated to bondage, which is Hagar, right? For this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and answering to Jerusalem, which now is in bondage, which is her children, right? With her children. But Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is the mother of all, okay? Now, so let's go ahead. Now, and I could just tell ye that desire to be under the law, do ye not hear the law? So now Paul is just showing that the systems of grace and law can't exist together as principles in our lives, right? Paul spoke spoke these things to the people, who promoted legalism and those who had succumbed to legalism, right? Those who had used the law as a basis of having a relationship with God. So this is where he's breaking them down now. The ones who used the law of having a relationship with God, who was the bondwoman, Hagar, of the flesh, the law of Moses, opposed to the free woman, who Christ died for, who was Sarah, the Israel, the promise, who died for and gave us grace, okay? So remember, bondwoman is Sarah, who represents bondage and captivity. Oh, my Lord, not Sarah. Bondwoman is Hagar, who represents captivity of the flesh, the laws, right? Who think that they can, earn God or receive salvation by the laws, right? By going by the laws or allowing the laws to rule them. But Sarah, who is the free woman, is representing Jerusalem, the heaven, who is the free woman, who Christ died for us, and now we're under grace, so we are free, a free will, just to go by faith, and we are saved by grace. Okay, so remember, Hagar, the bondwoman, the flesh, represented by the laws of Moses, okay, and goes by the law, and is represented by bondage and captivity. And Sarah, who is the free woman, represents Jerusalem, represents how Christ became persecuted for us because of our sins, and allowed us grace and allowed us free will, right? So we can be Christ-like and receive salvation. So, okay, Hagar, flesh, Ishmael, Sarah, Jerusalem, heaven, freedom, okay? And now he said, because which things are an allegory, for these are the two covenants. The one from the Mount Sinai, which gendered to bondage, which is Hagar. Because he's saying Hagar. When he say Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, because in Mount Sinai was when Moses got those 10 commandments, was the law, right? Which caused them to be in bondage because they was trying to follow the laws to please God, right? And then he said, verse 26, but Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is the mother of us all. Jerusalem, which is free, represents Sarah, the promises and everything, the mother of us all, faith and grace and everything, right? Verse 27, for it is written, rejoice, thou barren, that bearest not, break forth and cry, thou that travelest not, for the desolate had many more children than she had than husband. So it's just saying, the desolate, who was persecuted, by Ishmael, because Ishmael, the Jews and all them, was the main ones who was persecuting the Christianity. And Ishmael represents, Hagar, Ishmael, those by Arabia, that's Ishmael, right? But Ishmael will represent the captivity and the bondage and represent the desolate, right? Because Ishmael, the Jews, the Pharisees, scribes, always persecuted the Messiah, persecuted Christianity, persecuted Jerusalem, okay? All right, Ishmael as the bondage captivity, who came in and tried to, who came in and tried to make a relationship by doing it their way, right? A scheme, and actually trying to concoct, the way they do it, to earn salvation through their way, through the fleshy way, all right? Now, and I also got that down. So the one by the bondwoman, let me write and read this. Hagar, who was Ishmael's mom's, who was the Egyptian, right? Ishmael was the firstborn, but he was the son according to flesh and unbelief and trying to make his own way before God. Ishmael was not born from Abraham's wife, but from his wife's servants, the bondwoman, from a concoct scheme to help God when Sarah would become pregnant. Okay, so remember, Hagar, Israel, the Egyptians, they all represent bondage and fleshy ways, right? Now, and you may not see, but it is legalism, right? Legalism, living in the fleshly way, denying the promises of God, trying to earn salvation through the law, right? This is like a descendant of Abraham. It is a descendant of Abraham because although Ishmael was descendants of Abraham, right? But they was living as Ishmael, a flesh, a bondage, a captivity. Because although Ishmael was the son of Abraham, right? So he's the descendant of Abraham, but he was living like Ishmael, right? Okay, because the more a man operates under legalism, he is damned. The more a person follows the ways of Christ in spirit and truth, the more he will ensure his peace and salvation, okay? All right. So remember, Hagar, Ishmael moms, who was an Egyptian, represents bondage and captivity. Flesh and everything, right? And it represents a person who wants to live by the laws. Okay, the laws that Moses gave on Mount Sinai, which is an allegory for Hagar. They could compare her to Mount Sinai, where Moses gave the laws, right? Which caused those people in the time to be under bondage because they were trying to live their life and create a relationship by God and earn his love and salvation by allowing the laws to guide him and prove to God that they can do it right. But there was only flesh, and there was bondage and captivity. But now we on Sarah. Now Sarah is known as the free woman, right? Abraham's second son's name was Isaac. He was born through the free woman, Sarah. He was the son of the promise and faith, right? God's miracle for Abraham. So Isaac was God's miracle for Abraham, okay? Remember the promise. So above all, the free person, of grace and faith, okay? So this is a total different thing, Now, Paul is comparing legality to Christianity, right? Determining that legalism is the work done by flesh, who is Ishmael, and the Christian life is by God's promise, miracle, and not flesh. So you see the two differences. Ishmael, Hagar, the laws that Moses gave on Mount Sinai, that compares to legality, right? And the Christian life, God's promise, the miracle, and God's promised miracles, and not of the flesh, but of the spirit is from Abraham, or it's from Sarah, okay, the free woman. Now it said the real Christian life is connected to God's promised miracles and not the flesh. Sarah miraculously bore Isaac for Abraham to fulfill the promises as a free woman and not as a bond woman of the flesh. So let me say that again. The real Christian life is connected to God's promised miracles and not the flesh. So the real Christian life is connected to God's promise to Sarah, right? And not the flesh, Hagar, okay? Now, Sarah miraculously bore Isaac from Abraham for Abraham to fulfill the promises as a free woman, right? And not as the bond woman, okay, of the flesh, right? Now, okay. See, okay, done. So now I just want to break that down to you guys. I hope you guys understood that. Okay, so now let me go back to the Bible. Okay, now it says, now I can go to verse 27. For it is written, rejoice thou barren that bearest not, break forth and cry, thou that travelest not. For the desolate had many more children than she which had an husband. For the desolate had many more children than she which had an husband. So it's just saying that, and I think I wrote that down. I want to make sure I be very, very clear. I don't want to get that one wrong because this is so deep. Do I have that? Okay, here we go. Now, I said, rejoice, O barren, you who do not bear. Okay, everyone is born because of a miracle of God. Okay, so what I have that's verse 24. Okay, Mount Sinai. Okay, I got that. Mount Sinai associated with Moses, law received in Exodus. Okay, Exodus 19 and 20. You can find the laws of that, right? All right. Now, let's see. This covenant gives birth to bondage. Okay, I did that. This covenant is also associated with Hagar. Okay, Hagar was a surrogate mother. Okay, I don't want to go to that, but I want to go to that one. This is how I wrote under law. Moses doing the pause, but Jerusalem is above. Okay. Let me see. Yeah. Did I write something about that? No. Probably not. But, of course, I'm going to explain it to you guys the best I can, okay? For it is written, rejoice thou barren that bearest not, break forth and cry, that thou travelest not, right? For the desolate had many more children than she which had a husband, right? Okay, so the desolate had many more children because the desolate are those who are desolate, right? Those, well, I can't put it like that because the desolate actually have many more children. You gotta look at the other way. The desolate, that the one who I was under persecution, right? The desolate would be those, now, who's gonna start following Christ like. So Christ is going to gain way many more children, right? So many children, so many people are going to follow Christ's ways, right? Therefore, the destiny will have many more children, which had an husband, right? Which had an husband, which was Sarah, who had an husband. So she would have many more people following her ways and freedom, and grace, because we are saved under grace. So many of us would be now it's under grace, opposed, to the children, who was not born by the free woman, right? Opposed to the children who's born under flesh, under Ishmael, right? It's going to be a whole lot of more children going to follow Christ-like ways, and they follow the flesh ways because we are under grace. So that means we all have offsprings, right? We all get the opportunity to earn salvation. So all the nations and everything, so it's many more of us, right? We are the desolate, the ones who are persecuted and everything, right? The desolate, the ones who Ishmael tried to persecute. But many, many more children now is going to follow more Christ-like ways, right? Who's going to be engrafted in and everything, right? So that's all it's saying, okay? And I really thought I wrote something down, but I guess I didn't. I thought I wrote this down, but I know exactly what it is. I got a chart on it and everything where it's actually breaking down Ishmael. This is referring to breaking down Ishmael and breaking down Isaac. It's just breaking down how Ishmael was persecuting all the Christianity and everything back during the ancient time, how they was on the flesh and everything, on the laws of Moses. But then you got Isaac on the other hand, who is under grace, is the promises of God, born from the free woman of Sarah. So that's all it's saying, that the destiny will have more children, right? They will have more children because the whole world is going to be following the Father through Christ, okay? All right. Verse 28. Now we, brethren, as Isaac was, are the children of the promise. So you see, now, that's what he's saying. Now we, brethren, as Isaac was, are the children of the promise. So all of us are the children of the promise because they given us, God, the Father has given us opportunity to earn our salvation, right? By faith, right? By seeking him and diligently, by living in righteousness, right? So that's why he said, now we, brethren, as Isaac was, are the children of the promise. So, and now this is, remember, and Paul, these are Galatians talking to Paul, telling them that now they're the children of the promise too. They are the children of the promise because we all are children of the promise because we all get the opportunity, to be saved by the Messiah's grace, okay? And it's going to be more desolate children, than Ishmael, okay? So, and that's what the Galatians just telling them, they're the children of the promise too, which they are. It was just that they was living under Ishmael laws instead of the free woman. Okay. All right. Verse 29. But as then he that was born after the flesh persecuted him that was born after the spirit, even so is now. So yeah, see? And now he's telling you who he was born after the flesh. It was Ishmael. Okay. So all those desolated people, now that's now you see. But as then he that was born after the flesh, Ishmael, right? Persecuted him that was born after the spirit, the Messiah. Even so is it now, because the Jerusalem, those who follow the Messiah, are in persecution status, right? But if you're not following the Messiah, then you good. You can live how you want to, right? That's why I said even is it now, right? Even so it is now, because us as Jerusalem, are being persecuted, right? So even as it now. So, back then, even as Ishmael, the Pharisees and the scribes was persecuting the Christians, is still happening today. Okay? And, and I got that one. Now we as Isaac was, our children of the promise, as Christians, we don't identify with Ishmael. We identify with Isaac as children of the promise that was received by faith. Okay? But he who was born according to the flesh then persecuted him who was born, okay, according to the spirit. And I wrote that, even so is now. Okay? And also, the Jerusalem, of course, above Jerusalem is free, and it is represented by the heavenly Jerusalem, right? Now, this covenant brings freedom, right? It is free, right? It is free because it recognized that Jesus paid the price, and we don't have to pay ourselves, right? When the Messiah became persecuted for our sins, he paid the price, right? So we don't have to pay for ourselves, right? Now, Jerusalem actually, again, it's the covenant, that brings freedom, is represented by the heavenly wife, which is the mother of us all, and this covenant has many children. As I wrote, many children. It is the mother of us all, okay? So it's going to be many more children following Christ like. Now, every Christian belongs to this covenant of the heavenly Jerusalem, and every birth under this covenant is a miracle, like the fulfillment of the prophecy for Isaiah 54:1, when he said, "Rejoice, O barren, you who do not bear. Everyone is born, because of a miracle of God," right? Every one of us is born by a miracle of God. He was persecuted and rose again and resurrected for our sins on the third day, and now we under grace, right? Okay, let's see. I have it here. Okay, and then it's also telling you, because it says, it's still going from verse 29, but as then he that was born after the flesh persecuted him that was born after the spirit, even so it is now. So it's saying Ishmael, it's about the Galatians and everything, who was also Jews, who are descendants of Abraham, but they was thinking like Ishmael, the flesh, and not like Isaac, from the promises, right? So it says Ishmael and his descendants persecuted Isaac, and his descendants. So we shouldn't be surprised that the modern day people who follow God in the flesh persecuted those who followed God in faith through the promise. So see, even as it's now still happening. So if Ishmael, his descendants persecuted Isaac and his descendants, why are we surprised now in the modern day people who are following Christianity are being persecuted by those who not following Christianity, right? Who are following the faith through the promise are being persecuted by Ishmael. Okay, those who are the flesh, right? Now, Ishmael, who are the Jews, still, who are the descendants of Abraham, have always persecuted true Christianity, right? Have always persecuted true Christianity, right? Who are the Jews? Ishmael was a Jew too, okay? Now, also, Ishmael was not a bad or cursed man. He just didn't receive the promise of God that was given to Abraham and his descendants. Okay, because remember, they was all in Jerusalem back then, and of course he was born of Abraham, okay, so they still make them around in Jerusalem, and they still was descendants of Abraham. They just wanted they want the promises, okay, all right. So I think that was it out of here, you guys. Let's see. I think that's it. Okay. I'll just read this because it's important. This is how most people were operating under the law of Moses during Paul's time to try to make it right with God by trusting the law to please God. But Jerusalem above, this covenant is associated with Jerusalem of Mount Zion. Okay? Not the earth, but Jerusalem above. God's new Jerusalem is in heaven. Okay? So not the earth. So Sarah represents Jerusalem above, not the earth, but the new Jerusalem in heaven, right? Now, and Paul also states that real Christianity comes from heaven and not the earth. So real Christianity comes from heaven. Remember? Following the ways of the Father through the Messiah. Okay? And also, just for the covenants, right? I want to tell you, a covenant is a contract that set the rules for our relationship with God, right? And the two covenants, because the two covenants, right? The covenant for Hagar, okay? Who represented the covenant of bondage, right? So this covenant gives birth to bondage because it gives us the rules to follow to be accepted by God, which doesn't allow us to be free from proving ourselves to God as well as earning our salvation before God. So that's Hagar, covenant, right? And this covenant is associated with Sarah. Oh, I'm sorry. Hagar, the covenant is, this Hagar covenant, right? And it also is associated with Hagar as a surrogate mother, because she was a surrogate mother for Abraham, right? Who born Ishmael for Abraham. Therefore, if it's used wrongly, then it becomes the covenant of the flesh, right? So if you're using the laws wrongly, Ishmael, the ways he's doing it wrongly, it becomes the covenant of the flesh, right? And that's his covenant, okay? Now, this covenant is what Jerusalem is now. Earthly Jerusalem, overseen by a religious Jerusalem. So this is the covenant we're in right now, right? A lot of them in this covenant is still under Ishmael covenant, not on Sarah covenant, right? An earthly Jerusalem overseen by a religious Jerusalem, right? The Pharisees and the scribes and everything like that, right? And it said, this is how most people were operating under the law of Moses during Paul's time to try to make it right with God by trusting the law the law to please God, okay? But remember, Jerusalem above is the covenant associated with Jerusalem of Mount Zion, okay? Not Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai was where the laws was given for Moses, right? But Jerusalem above, right, that's a covenant associated with Mount Zion. You know, not the earth, but Jerusalem above. God's new Jerusalem is in heaven, okay? All right. Let's see. I think that is it, you guys. Oh, I did write this down. For this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and answer it to Jerusalem, which now is, and is in bondage with her children. So right now, it's saying the children of this world right now is in bondage, right? They're under Ishmael laws, right? Under Hagar, Mount Sinai ways, right? But Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is the mother of us all. So remember, Jerusalem that is above is free, which is the mother of all. So Mount Sinai is associated with Moses' law received in Exodus chapter 19 to 20 at Mount Sinai, right? Okay. But again, Jerusalem is connected with Zion. Okay. And okay, so I think that's it. It looks like. Yeah, I think I got you guys done. I think I read everything out of here. Yeah, to make it clear as possible. I took a long time writing it down. It was woo! I had to get it right. Oh no, I want to say a few more things about the law, right? Because it said Paul shows that the system of grace and law can exist together as principle in our lives. Paul spoke to those who promoted legalism and to those who had succumbed to legalism, those who had used the law as the basis of having a relationship with God. Under the law, it is what you do for God that makes you right before him, okay? So I'm just reading this again. Now, under the grace of God, the focus is on Jesus and what Jesus has done for us, right? So this is different under the grace, under Sarah, you know, the free woman. The law is for us to walk and be guided by, okay? God's rules. It's what guides us and not drive us. So the law do not drive us, it guides us. People get it mixed up. You got to have faith. If you got faith, then you abide the law. Without faith, you don't abide the law, okay? So it don't drive us, it guides us, okay? Now, all right, so, and then for the last thing, when it says, for it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bond maid and the other by a free woman. So like I told you guys, both of my Abraham descendants. However, you know, the legalists who troubled the Galatians protested they were children of Abraham. So the legalists was the people who was trying to get the Galatians, was deceiving them and everything, right? Now he was telling them that they descendants of Abraham. And Paul agreed to it, right? But he just wanted them to know that Abraham had two sons. Don't forget about Isaac. Don't forget about the second son. You guys are a descendant of Abraham, of the first son, which is of flesh. But let's not forget about the second son, Isaac, of the promise. Okay? And I think that is it for real, you guys. Yeah. Yeah. I sure did. Okay. So now we verse well, I can reread verse 29 or I'll start with 28. Now we, brethren, as Isaac was, are the children of the promise. I explained it to you guys. Verse 29, but as then he that was born after the flesh persecuted him that was born after the spirit, even so it is now. I explained it to you guys, right? Verse 30, nevertheless, what said the scripture? Cast out the bondwoman and her son, for the son of the bondwoman should not be heir with the son of the free woman. So then, brethren, we are not children of the bondwoman, but of the free. So cast out that bondwoman, cast out that fleshy way, cast out those lawly ways that you thinking that's just driving you, right? Cast out that bondwoman and her son. Cast out that fleshy ways. Cast out that bondage and that captivity. You know, cast those laws out, because now you are under the free woman. So cast out the bondwoman and her son, right? And adopt the ways of the free woman, right? Of Jerusalem, of grace, of will, of mercy, okay? So then, you know, because we are not children of the bondwoman, we are free, all right? So you are not of Ishmael any longer, but you are of Sarah. You are the seed of the promise. You are free, and act like you free. Remove yourself and separate yourself from that bondage and that captivity of the bondwoman and her son, Hagar, Ishmael. Hagar, who was an Egyptian, Ishmael, who was a son, okay, who concocted that scheme to have Sarah have a baby to think they was doing the work for God, okay, under the flesh, under the laws. Reject the bondwoman and cast out the bondwoman and her son. Because, brethren, we are of the free woman, Sarah, right? We are free. We are free. Oh, my, you guys. Woo! I really hope you guys got the understanding for that. Because that was a long lesson. It took me almost 3 hours to keep writing and understand that bondwoman and that free woman thing, represent Jerusalem, and Jerusalem, Zion, opposed to Mount Sinai and the flesh and the laws. Because that was a mystery I just tried to break down for you guys. The difference between Jerusalem and heaven and the laws, okay? The difference between Hagar, the Egyptian, who born Ishmael for Abraham, who are also descendants, opposed to Sarah, who born Isaac, who received the promise, and who are the free woman, and who represents Jerusalem of the heaven and not the earth, who we are all a part of as the offsprings of. In the end, we are free. So cast out that bondwoman and her son, okay? Because we are free and we are under faith and grace. Those laws are to guide us and not to drive us. But faith, and that Holy Spirit is sent through us to our hearts so we can live freely, right? Like Christ-like, more down that holy and narrow path, right? So we do not maintain in captivity and bondage that that Hagar and her son Ishmael, have born us and assumed us to become. But no, my brother and sister, we are free. We are of that free woman of Sarah, of Jerusalem, of that new Jerusalem of heaven, okay? Under grace, under faith, under mercy, under the Messiah, who was persecuted by the Galatians, who was persecuted by the bondwoman and Hagar and Ishmael, who was persecuted by them because they were true Christianity, right? But because they persecuted him, he resurrected, and now it's Jerusalem, representing Sarah, not earth, but the heaven, as the free woman under grace and faith and mercy. All right, you guys, I really hope I broke down this to you guys. I tried to be as clear as possible, breaking down Galatians 6. Woo! It took a lot of research to understand that. Nothing but mysteries. But I hope that I allowed you guys to understand. I hope I broke it down as clear as possible, right? So again, this is Galatians 6. And again, right? And the last thing, again, I'm going to read Galatians 4, chapter 4, verse 9. You have come too far. But now, after that ye have known God, or rather are known of God, how turn ye again to the weak and beggarly elements of the world? Now that I have learned you guys and just broke down everything to have you guys understand where you come from and where are you going, and have gained you guys knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, why turn back to the weak and beggarly elements of this world? Don't turn back if you have allowed the Father have now gained you his knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and you are now known by the Father. Because if he have gained you all this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and you call yourself falling back, your punishment is way worse. So my brother and sister, if you have gained the knowledge and wisdom and understanding by the Father, and you have become that free person under Sarah, under Jerusalem, under heavens, then don't go back to captivity, okay? Stay with the Father, because now he known you, right? And you can gain that eternal salvation, okay? All right, you guys. Happy Tuesday again. I love y'all. Peace.